Good day, everyone. Welcome to all my listeners to Is Your Way in Your Way podcast. And I'm your host. My name is Cassandra Crawley Mayo. And for my new listeners, let me tell you what this podcast is all about. It's for those individuals who are ready to move forward in their lives, overcome obstacles, mitigate those self imposed barriers that's preventing you from living your best life. And we talk about topics related to personal and business development and even self improvement. And today, we have a great topic called titled Are You Ready to Stand Up for Yourself? And let me introduce my guest to you. Hello, Sandy Stream.
Hi, Cassandra. Thanks for having me on your show.
Yes. Hey, listeners, Sandy is she knows it very well. Are you ready to stand up for yourself? And we're going to see how this pertains to these listeners who are ready to, well, I say is your way in your way, kind of ready to move out of your way on this one. Before we get started, though, I'd like to read Sandy's biography so you get to know her a little bit. Now, Sandy is an author, an activist whose work is built on the belief that everybody deserves and can find peace and warrior like strength within themselves. After teaching law for 20 years, raising her two children, and facing a life full of adversities and lessons, she turned her efforts toward facilitating workshops for young and experienced adults to encourage them to live in peace and power. The title of her book, The Courage Circle: How to Live in Truth and Dare. So, Sandy, this is what I'd like to know, and I know my audience wants to know this too. Tell me about your journey that has gotten you to where you are today.
A lifetime of journey would take a long time to do here, but I guess mine, like so many people, was just full of so many different adversities. And during COVID, things were quite worse in my personal life, in myself, and just the difficulty was so high. And I somehow figured out I better start to look for answers of how to live so that I can feel well.
Mhm.
And so I just spent a lot of time, I guess you can call it researching, because I was researching, in terms of reading and listening and outward information, but also researching inwardly to see, how do I live basically to
Yeah,
feel well,
yeah.
regardless of what's going on. And I guess my organization skills or complex thinking skills have somehow led me to start to organize all the information that I was receiving and learning into little bits and pieces. And it was not one thing. So it's not, meditate for 10 minutes a day and you're going to feel well. It didn't work that way. It was a puzzle. And
Okay.
so, yeah, I put this puzzle together and created a book from that. And now I generally feel like I know how to, navigate my life, feeling soft, meaning very kind, and at the same
Mhm.
time, very strong. So
Mm.
that's where I'm at. And
Okay.
now I'm trying to share, my experiences with others in my courage circle. So I created circles since then in February in Montreal, and we discuss all these topics.
Okay. Well, that's great. Now, your courage circle, and as you aware, my listeners they want to move forward in their lives. There's certain things that they like to do, but they're stuck. Like, for
Mm,
example, some of them want to leave a relationship, some of
yeah,
them want to get in a relationship. There's some of them that want to change jobs,
yeah,
there's some that want to be promoted.
Mm,
on their job. There's some that want to be an entrepreneur. They have a business. They have this vision, something they've always wanted to do, but they have not been able to do it.
yeah.
So tell me a little bit about the courageous life. Like courage is very important, and the name of your book is The Courage Circle. So you talk about um, not just sitting there, but getting up and doing what you need to do. So, how could the Courage Circle help my listeners do that?
Oh, I mean, what we do in the circle is discuss, one topic at a time every week. But obviously, I mean, with your listeners, they can read the book or they can, just start learning for themselves the many different pieces that it would take to do that. So it's not one piece. So I can give a few examples.
Okay.
So one piece would be starting to learn to validate your own feelings, because unfortunately, we live in a society where as soon as we express ourselves, either we often get, either dismissed or gaslighted, or
Yeah.
we get quick advice or quick, fix it, or telling us what to do. And so that kind of response to us leads us to not being able to process our feelings well and
Hmm.
listen to our feelings, actually. So instead of like,
Okay.
oh, I shouldn't feel sad, I shouldn't feel mad, it's more like, hey, I'm kind of feeling mad. Why do I feel mad? And what should I be
Right.
doing about this? So
Okay.
I think that's one step. Other things would be to unlearn a lot of lessons we might have had in our life. For example, that taking care of yourself is selfish. That's a very big one that a lot of people grapple with, to feel like if they, say no to something, no, I can't come for dinner, I'm
Hmm.
tired, for example, as simple as that,
Hmm.
that's somehow a selfish act.
Okay.
So to start learning to think of this as a responsible act instead of a selfish act. There's so many other, I mean, there's so
Yeah.
many pieces, self trust is a whole other piece, to start to learn to trust yourself and follow what your inner guidance system is telling you to do, because I do believe each one of us carries within us a clear guidance of what is, the way to move.
Right. So, do you think a lot of people do that because they're trying to please others? And if so, why is that?
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly a big one. When we're young, I think it's kind of, I would say it's probably natural, actually, to make sure we are liked, by our parents. And there's
Hmm.
probably a very survival need to be liked. If you're not liked, you're going to get maybe thrown away or not fed. So there's
Yeah.
quite a big survival need involved in that.
Okay.
But as we get older and mature emotionally, we can start to question whether we need to live our whole life doing actions to be liked versus doing actions that are, what feels right for us, whether we are liked or not. And so we discuss that in the circle a lot as well, how, if you do things for the purpose of someone saying yes or no to what you're doing, how you've basically given away all your power, right? So if, for
Hmm.
example, today I say, Cassandra, you are the person who gets to decide if I'm a good person. You're the person who gets to decide if I'm good or not, nice or not, doing the right thing or
Right.
not, approve of me or not. So then that means it's sitting in your hands and not in my hands.
Okay.
Where, and we can take that back and decide that, I will be the one who decides what my next move is and whether it's appropriate or not. And,
Okay.
things like
Yeah.
that. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Take my listeners. I want to give you an example because
Sure.
a lot of my listeners are stuck in what it is that they want to do. If
Mm,
they, like, for example, when I say stuck, maybe somebody knows that they're probably in a relationship and the
mm,
relationship is not good for them. And
yeah.
if in fact they are able to move on, then they're able to maybe do some things in their life that they've always wanted to do. If
Yeah.
they were, how would the carriage circle work for somebody like that? Like what they would come in the circle and what would happen?
Well, I mean, every week we discuss different things. So, for example, if they attended on a circle, one of the topics we've had, well, I mean, we've had so many, but let's say one would be on boundaries, right? Which is so
Okay.
important. And, when everybody discusses how they've learned, it's a very, very challenging thing to set boundaries if you didn't
Mhm.
have it in your family.
Mm-hmm.
So if you weren't used to saying no, in your home and that being respected, whatever type of no that is, it's just very hard to do it as an adult. And I do know people in my group that, they did it for the first time in their 50s or 40s, saying a simple thing like, no, I'm not coming for dinner tonight, mom. I
Mm-hmm.
have, to do something. Like that was a
Yeah.
very challenging thing to do. But, as we slowly start to respect our inner guidance, so boundaries are not like rules, like, oh, I'm going to say no and it's mean and I'm trying to control you. At the
Yeah.
opposite, it's more like a yes to something internal that's saying, this is not the way to go. This
Okay.
way is the way to go. And
Okay.
so if they were in the circle and everyone is sharing their experiences about it openly and honestly,
Mm-hmm.
they might, maybe see that this is normal actually to do this
Okay.
and
Okay.
natural and healthy. And
So they're sharing their stories, and I hear that sharing stories has a lot to do with your healing. Do you believe that? In
I do,
sharing?
but, unfortunately, I have not participated in many environments which allow or have the kind of environment we need to share. So, what would that environment look like? At least for me, what I've seen now since doing these every week in February, there's a few elements that are necessary. One, people need to, and this is what I invite them to do, to drop their titles and their images and their
Mm-hmm.
professions and all that. And me being, a lawyer from a prestigious law school, being the first one to do this, I think helps others kind of let go of this idea of comparing ourselves
Right.
by our degrees or our titles or our work. It doesn't mean if you're going through a difficult time that you're somehow less than, more than. It doesn't mean if you earned a certain degree and didn't earn another degree that you're less than, more than. And so I think it's very essential, essential for the environment to already have that feeling, which we do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We are just
Mm-hmm.
all showing up in a different point in our lives with different experiences, and nobody's better than anyone else for that.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
very hard to find. I don't think people generally do that together. And then I think another second very important element is to be able to listen to somebody's experience, whatever it is, and not jump on it. Jumping meaning not try to fix it, change it, help it, control it,
Mm-hmm.
dismiss it, judge it, anything actually.
Right.
So, in that kind of
Exactly.
space, yes, people can process whatever they need to process, pick up what they pick up, learn what they pick up, get the courage they need for whatever. It's their job,
Right.
their sovereignty kind of to figure that out in that kind of space. So I think it's quite powerful actually what happens in these circles.
Well, Sandy, you're exactly right. Like, usually people will say, "Well, tell me about yourself," and they'll say, "Oh, I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I do this." And how in your circle, how do you mitigate that from happening, or do you? And if so, how?
Yeah, I could describe how I did some trial and error, I guess, just to see the feeling. But what I do is I ask everyone actually to introduce themselves first
Right.
with their typical, who are you? And so I start. My name is Sandy. I'm a graduate from this university. I'm a lawyer, blah, blah, blah. Everyone
Right.
does the same. I'm an
Yeah.
IT teacher. I'm a this and that. And then I ask them, I invite them, can we just for this 1 hour, drop this? Can we drop this point system that I
Mm-hmm.
don't know where it came from, this point system, or who created it, or why we're all following it. But
Mm-hmm.
can we drop this point system for this hour and just deal with each other from, a different space? You can call it your humanity, you can call it your heart, your spirit, your
Okay.
soul, your energy, whatever
Okay.
word, feels right. So that's how
Right.
I ask people to do it and to treat each other as human beings during that hour. And it kind of works.
Oh, okay. That's
Yeah.
interesting. That's interesting. And I
Yeah.
guess it's all based on what the title's going to be for that session as well, to help them to dive into what it is that you all are looking to express.
Yeah, yeah. So
Right?
we do this kind of dropping of our, title stuff at the beginning. Then we do a quick listening exercise, and then we get into a new topic. So last week we were talking about belonging and how everyone discussed their own experiences of, some
Mhm.
difficulties, some triumphs, some new concepts of what does it mean to belong. Somebody was talking about, how they don't feel they need to belong to anything anymore. They just belong to themselves.
Oh,
Or,
wow.
so yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting. Every week
Yeah.
is fascinating, when it's
Wow.
open and respectful and
Yeah.
honest, a lot
Yeah.
of things can happen in our world. And
Yeah.
so,
And they feel safe in that environment.
well, I think it just feels, yeah, it's not just safe, that it feels real. Everybody is
Hmm.
honest. And
Hmm.
so everything is true. And there's
Okay.
nothing really more to it than that if everybody
Okay.
is speaking their truth.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Because I mentioned that because the lack of authenticity, if people sometimes don't feel, like what we talk about in this room stays in this room,
Yeah.
because there could be individuals that know each other because they introduced them through the circle, so that's why I asked that question about being safe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what are some tools to help release negative thoughts and activate compassion?
I mean, things that worked for me. I mean, I've gone through a lot of difficult times. I feel at peace now because I operate doing what I feel I should do all the time. I've processed a lot of my pain and my emotions, but things we can do is just start to notice whether we are being kind to ourselves or not all the time. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of different types of meditation that are, body based. So we want to
Mhm.
not focus on our thoughts, but focus on our bodies. I like to use the word we've been decorporated, meaning we've been cut off from our bodies. I don't know if
Okay.
it really exists. It's kind of an unused word, but it makes sense to me. So we're
Mhm.
not paying attention of what happens in the body. We're just in thoughts. And there's a
Okay.
lot that's happening in the body.
Yeah.
Our feelings, our gut, our heart, our so anything that you do that is heart based, there's all kinds of heart meditations or yoga practices or, feeling your pain, journaling that's still in the body, especially if you
Mhm.
write by hand.
Mhm.
All those things will get you more towards the feeling state and not the thinking state. And then
Yeah.
once we start feeling, we can also feel care for ourselves and feel for ourselves, that we've had a hard time and start learning compassion for ourselves before even worrying or thinking about compassion for anyone else. I mean, that for me will come naturally if you have learned to feel it for yourself. So that's definitely where I would direct my attention towards feeling, being kind to yourself. If you're going through a hard time, just maybe patting yourself on the back or saying, it's hard, talking
Yeah.
to yourself, like, this is really hard, as opposed to like, oh, you're such an idiot. Why did you do that?
Yeah. Okay.
So that's a big one, I think. And then surrounding yourself with people that exude that will help propagate that as well, if you can find them, because having unkindness when you're struggling towards yourself or from others just doesn't really help anyone. So that's
Right.
also another big one.
So it sounds like I want to talk about emotions.
Sure.
Emotions are some people, like you said, oh, why did you do that? Like you're judging yourself. But
Yeah.
then I thought I read something about you didn't think emotions are not a bad thing. Is that right? Or
Yes, I don't. I think
okay.
they're natural. I mean, our bodies are natural and they speak. And so, if you feel angry, for example, instead of, oh my God, I shouldn't feel angry. This teacher was just trying to do that, for
Hmm.
example, or I shouldn't feel angry at my parents. They're just doing their best.
Yeah.
I would do the opposite. I would say, well, why am I angry? And anger is not aggression, right? They're two separate things. They can not do anything to anybody, but we
Okay.
can try to understand why we feel that way. And often, maybe boundaries have been broken or we feel disrespected or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. And so if we can just feel our emotion and figure out the reason, or sometimes it's a deeper reason, maybe we're hurt. So we need to
Right.
process the hurt underneath the anger.
Okay.
As long as the anger is not coming from just controlling other people, like I'm angry, you're not doing exactly what I think you should do,
Right. Yeah.
then anger is very healthy and it'll guide you to what
Mm-hmm.
you need to do next, or you need to process old emotions. Or if you're
Hmm.
sad, that also can be a guide. That could be, I'm really sad. Maybe I'm lonely. Maybe I need to find friends. Maybe I need to get
Mhm.
out there. So if we look to our emotions more as, guides, or allowing them to be felt, or allowing our old pain to process, then we won't be steering away from ourselves. We'll be going towards ourselves
Right,
more and more and more. It might be painful. Yes,
right.
I do think so. Pain is on the path to peace, in my opinion, and on many
Mhm.
people's opinion. And
Okay,
so, but we'll just be getting in touch with ourselves a little bit more. So there's no, as far as I have experienced, there's no negative emotion. What we can talk about is behaviors, but that's something completely different, right?
right, okay,
Yeah,
right. So that's interesting. Pain is a path to peace.
yeah.
Uh, so if somebody's in pain, then they're going to do what's necessary to, what could I say, to subdue the pain so that they can have peace. Or explain that to me. Pain is a
Um,
path to peace.
Well, pain not meaning like, oh, I need to struggle. At the contrary, I don't
Okay,
need to continue to suffer more and more and more.
right.
That
Okay,
would be uncompassionate to
yeah.
myself. I'm actually trying to find ways to stop my suffering. That's
Okay,
compassionate. But pain is, a feeling. Like I feel pain because, of what happened to me, or I was hurt, and I have
okay,
this pain that I might avoid. So if we avoid our pain, then we might do, drugs, alcohol, too much
yeah.
exercise, too much work, too much whatever. But if we try to feel our pain, I mean, there's an expression, you need to feel it to heal it. You might
Okay.
go towards it, feel it, maybe not hold on to it forever, because maybe at some
Mhm,
point you'll need to let go of
mhm.
whatever you've experienced. But sometimes we need to go towards feeling pain because that's the truth. We need to feel the truth of what happened. Maybe the truth is, yeah, the truth is I was hurt by whatever it is, and feel
Right.
it and cry and get
Okay.
support or whatever it is, and then perhaps let it go. And then your body will, process all this. And then now you're left with something that is not being contained or hidden or avoided anymore.
Yeah.
And so
Okay.
you can do this for a lot of different experiences, which can help process your emotions, process your old pains,
Okay.
um, and can help you arrive towards your body feeling at ease after
Okay.
that. Yeah.
Okay. So this podcast was birthed out of a book
Mm.
which is titled "Is Your Way in Your Way" is the title of my book.
Mm.
And this book has been in the making, I would say 12, almost
Mm.
12 years,
Oh.
and it was like a burden on
Mm.
for all these years, and I just got stuck with it. I
Yeah.
got stuck because I didn't want to be exposed,
Mm.
based on, the things that I felt that I should share that would be a blessing to individuals. I didn't
Oh.
want people to perhaps know my story. So I'm
Mm.
trying to find out, like, if I knew about your circle during this process, and this was maybe feeling stuck was one of the titles in your circle. Um, how would you go about, or how would you facilitate the group, I would say, and understanding being stuck and what does that mean, and it can, because your book is about power, so is there a power in that you could have gotten from the group to kind of help people who've been stuck in certain things? Am I making sense?
Sure, you are. Yeah. I mean, from the tone that you used in how you described how you came about to use your book, there was an element of like, I don't know if it's uncertainty exactly, or shame, or
Mhm,
embarrassed, or worried a little bit to be ourselves, which is such a common feeling.
mhm,
And I think what's extremely common related to that is most people think something is wrong with them
mhm.
innately.
Okay,
And so that comes from,
that's good.
everybody. keep telling you something's wrong with you
Yes.
because I keep trying to tell you what to do. So something
Right.
must be wrong
Okay.
with the way you are. And so I
Okay.
understand where the feeling comes from. And so one thing that I've come to feeling, and I cannot do this for anyone else, it's something they can look into themselves for,
Hmm.
is this idea. So a lot of people also, they talk about this word being good enough, right?
Yes.
As if like, if I reach like 80%, that's good enough, but I'm still flawed 20%, but 80 is enough. Like that's the way
Yeah.
I hear it. And I don't really buy that idea myself of
Yeah.
even using that language. And maybe you and others, I'm not the only one that prefers to use the word that I am goodness or I'm good, just
Hmm.
period,
Hmm.
100%. I may have made
Hmm.
mistakes. I may have not known my path all the time. I
Hmm.
may this, but there's nothing fundamentally flawed
Right.
internally in my heart. And that you can only discover by looking for the truth in yourself and saying, like, no, I didn't. I'm not. Nothing's wrong with me. I just went through a hard time. I'm good. I've
Right.
been trying hard.
Right.
I've been doing my best. Like, and
Yeah.
so when you
Yeah.
discover that, goodness inside yourself, it's the one thing, or goodness inside your essence, or whatever you can find in there by your own compassion for yourself. Then I think everything kind of comes from there in terms of what to do, because now if you see there's mistakes, you're not hard on yourself about it. It's not like a
Right.
bad thing. I made a mistake.
Hmm.
It's just, oh, I made a mistake. Okay, I'll figure it out. But
Yeah.
it doesn't affect this innate goodness. Like you're not losing points for being mistakes or not mistakes anymore, because
Right.
innately, you feel like you're just, there's something pure in there.
Yeah.
Or so this is
Okay.
something that we can share with each other by looking at other people in that way without looking at them as if something is wrong with them. Maybe
Yes.
they're struggling, maybe you're
Right.
making mistakes, but you're
Yeah.
not flawed
Yeah.
internally. So I don't know if that's what
Yeah.
you have found in yourself, maybe to help you or not, or
Yeah. It's like what you just said reminds me of self-discovery.
yeah,
Just kind of finding out, like, perhaps you're right. I felt maybe I wasn't good enough. I didn't want to be exposed. Some of
yeah,
the things I did were bad. Um,
yeah,
Rather than saying some of the things I did was part of life, you know,
yeah,
and I have compassion for myself. So, and to reframe how I was thinking
yeah,
has a lot to do with self-discovery, and just be tenacious about it and
yeah,
be intentional
yeah,
about it. And I think with that, it could change your thought pattern,
yeah,
and put you on a road to do what you've been kind of stuck in doing.
yeah. That's very
Yeah,
nice. Yeah, and
yeah,
I guess if you're reframing that for people, that's probably very helpful. If we see things as like mistakes that we're learning from, instead
right,
of you're bad, you're good, you're bad, you're good, which I
exactly.
think is just, it's not even a thought. I truly believe it's false. Like, it's
Yes,
something we can feel in ourselves. So it's
exactly.
almost a truth. It's not an
Yeah,
opinion, if at least
yeah,
for me. Yeah.
yeah. Sandy, now I'm curious. In your book, The Courage Circle, and then I guess the subtitle is Truth or Dare and Dare. What's the truth and how to live in truth and dare? Explain that subtitle.
Well, for me, the truth part, that was my focus all the time, to try to,
Okay.
get better. Meaning, what's true? What is true about how I should act? What's true? Is there pain or not? What's
Mm-hmm.
true? Is this relationship healthy or not? So, not whether it's fun to see it, or I want to see it, or I don't want to see it, just what is actually true about the
Mm-hmm.
situation, about myself. So, the more we focus on what's true instead of what's good or bad, I think is just something that can lead us to this inner
Okay.
findings. And then the dare
Okay.
part, I guess, is just that it takes a lot of courage, I think, to
Mm.
live with, I don't want to call it in contradiction, but not believing a lot of the messages that we have in our society about how to live, and to follow ourselves even if nobody agrees, to set boundaries even if people get upset, to
Okay.
speak our truth even if others don't agree. So it just takes a lot of courage to live this way in general, I think. But it is, at least for me, living in this truth, for myself, and being very kind towards myself while
Mm-hmm.
being courageous is how I feel in peace. So that's how I feel well
So,
in myself. Yeah.
right, right.
Yeah.
So how does the title Are you ready to stand up for yourself? How does that correlate or correspond with what we're talking about?
Well, I think many pieces you touched upon already, right? So a lot of it is like, we're hiding ourselves or hiding our truth in one way or another.
Hmm.
And so at some point to come out of that, it probably takes a very courageous move where you are in one way or another defending, yourself or your space or
Hmm.
your right to be on this earth. And so that takes courage because
Hmm.
you might have not done it before. And if you're doing it, it's probably not easy, and those you're doing it with might not
Hmm.
appreciate it. So it's not an easy thing to do to say, hey, I belong here. I have a right to speak. I have a right to be in peace and find my happiness, to be treated well, respectfully, all that. I mean, that is a
Right.
very difficult thing to do for yourself, by yourself
Okay.
sometimes. So,
Right. So that's kind of like for my listeners who really want to move forward in their lives and trying to overcome these self-imposed barriers to say, if I want to open up a business, I can. And it's kind of like when the student's ready, the teacher will appear. I'll get the support that I need to do that. If there's a relationship I need to leave, it's okay. I can do that. Or if
yeah.
I want to change jobs, sure, I can do so. It's like standing up for what's in your heart.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Okay.
not criticizing yourself if you're not ready, also. Not, oh,
Okay.
I'm such an idiot. I'm still in this. You can
Right.
still say, like, okay, I'm still having a hard time doing this. Even that you could be compassionate about, because building the compassion will, eventually maybe lead you to realize that, you matter in the world as much as
Right.
anybody else.
Right.
And you deserve to be treated well and live in peace like everybody in the world. So,
Right. That's what I was getting ready to say. That's one way of finding peace inside.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Absolutely. Now, my last question for you. You made a comment that was striking, and I'm trying to figure out why is the comfort zone the uncomfortable zone?
Oh, yeah.
Because you would think the comfort zone would be comfort because
Yeah.
that's what you're used to doing, but you're saying it's really an uncomfortable zone.
Yeah. I mean, you could call it comfort, but it's not necessarily comfortable. It's just what you know. So, what you know is a certain way. And so you think that's comfortable, but it's actually what you know. What you don't know, so what people call uncomfortable, is actually just the unknown. Like you don't know how it's going to be because you didn't
Mm,
do that. But it doesn't mean it's not much more comfortable than currently, because you could be in a comfort zone in abuse. You think that's just what you're
mm.
used to, that's your known. And
Okay,
so it
okay,
can be
gotcha.
very uncomfortable, actually. It's just known. And so you think it's more comfortable than the unknown. And what's in the
Okay,
unknown can actually be wonderful, and opportunities and peace and all kinds of things. It's just something you have to go towards without knowing where it's going to lead. And that's very difficult for people to go towards. They don't know how it's going to be. And to just trust that it's okay and that it's going to be fine, and to leave what does not feel right
mm-hmm,
into a zone of, I don't
mm-hmm,
know what's going to happen. But
mm-hmm.
I don't know what's going to happen is not necessarily negative. It's
Right.
just not known,
That's interesting because we have a tendency to be comfortable, like you said, in what we know, so we're comfortable, but yet that
quote
may
unquote.
not, yeah,
Yeah.
but that may not be the place for us.
Yeah.
That could make us uncomfortable. It's kind of like the status quo with people wanting to do certain things in their life.
Yeah.
They're comfortable, but are they really comfortable with that? If they want
Correct.
to do something else, then
Exactly.
they're kind of being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Great insight. I appreciate that. I
Mm.
appreciate that. Okay, as we wrap up, you said a lot of great things, but I'd like for you to a call to action to my listeners, like what is it that they could do now, like when the podcast is over, what are some things that you could that enable them to minimize their barriers that's preventing them from living their best life? Any call to action for them?
Well, what I would what I like to say often is to trust yourself. Just trust yourself, even if nobody ever has before. And
Mhm.
with many people, nobody has ever trusted them before. Everyone is telling them what to do.
Yeah,
And so they've never developed that feeling to just trust that, if I feel that's what I should do, then it must be correct, right? Because I
yeah,
feel it. So
yes.
that's what I would
Okay,
invite people to do, to start
okay.
to trust yourself and, know that you've been made in a way that you have internal guidance and look for that
Mm.
internal guidance.
Oh, wow, that's heartfelt.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
trust the process. Yeah. Now, Sandy, if people wanted to get involved in your carriage circle or contact you, how can they do that?
So I have a website called thecouragecircle.com. So I put podcasts like yours or whatever I'm up to speaking up, because I do this a little bit as like my little activism in the world, to
Okay.
speak up on these topics. So
Yes.
I post those, and there's also the link to the meetup group that I have. So I have a in person in Montreal, but also they're free online, and we
Okay.
meet. Online is also it's new, and just once a week we meet and discuss different topics. So welcome to join that too.
Okay. Well,
Mhm.
thank you. I like to thank you, Sandy, for your insight, and to all my listeners out there. If you believe, which I know many of you do, that this podcast was insightful and you know of somebody that it would be of value to, please share it. And know that every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Is Your Way in Your Way podcast is airs live. And so I like to say to stay tuned for some other, what I call some awesome topics. And I like this topic as, are you ready to stand up for yourself? Ask yourself, are you ready to stand up for yourself? And as Sandy said, trust yourself in doing so. So everyone, Sandy, thank you. My listeners, thanks for listening, and God bless.
Thank you, Cassandra.
Mhm.